Hello again. Chris Lee of Southeastern 16, joined by Graham Doty, Alfred Ezman, and his mustache, and Anthony Dasher of UGAsports.com, our special guest today. As we talk SEC baseball, we'll be going through some midweek results and things that happened there of note. We'll be making some other discussion points here and there. We'll take your questions. We'll take your comments. But first of all, Dash, welcome to the show. Let's start here. You were in Kennesaw yesterday for that wild thing between Georgia and Kennesaw State that got a good bit of national attention.
Yeah.
We had Brian Curley sticking out his tongue at base runners and striking out guys in the game. We had manager ejections. I mean, we're coach ejections. We had all kinds of stuff. What was it like being in the ballpark for that one yesterday?
Well, it was a crazy game. No question about that. Kennesaw State is having its regular field totally renovated. I'm not sure why they're doing it in season, but that's another story for another day, I guess. But that's one of the darkest places I think I've ever seen. I mean, you could tell on television. It was just it wasn't a fun place to play. I know it wasn't a fun place for the outfielders, but yeah, it was an interesting game. It was chippy from the start. I mean, it's not unlike, say when Vanderbilt plays an in-state team from Tennessee, there's always going to be that, that stuff kind of happens. Some people call it little brother syndrome, whatever, because these teams want to beat the big state team, and you're going to see some, things, flare up from time to time. And we saw this pretty early on yesterday. You mentioned Coach Johnson getting tossed from the game. The umpire, claimed that freshman Bryce Clavon did not get into the box in time and didn't beat the clock, and which was weird because there was no clock available anywhere to even look at to to tell how long you might have. So coach got ejected for that, and it wound up coming at a good time. Georgia was trailing 4-2, and they scored 4 runs over the next 3 to win the ball game. And then, like I said, there was chirping going on back and forth between the two teams. There was a ground out to first base, and there was a Kennesaw State player running by the Georgia bench yapping, and Slade Alford gets up the bat and hits one about 500 feet and just stares down the pitcher. Yeah. I mean, waited about 10 seconds, it seemed like, before he started on his trot. And that kind of, ticked off KSU a little bit. And it kind of went back and forth like that. And then, of course, Brian Curley with the now famous tongue waggle at the runner at second base right before dropping the curve in for the final strike. So he's had his 10 minutes of fame this morning, I know, on social media, got on ESPN and all that kind of fun stuff. It was definitely an interesting game.
What was the reaction of Wes Johnson after that? Like, how'd that conversation go post game?
Well, of course, the first question that was asked was, "Hey, Coach, did you get ejected on purpose?" Because again, at that time, Georgia's bats have been pretty lethargic, and this one, not a whole lot of energy. And of course, he said, "No, that wasn't part of the plan." But I think otherwise on that, to be quite honest with you, the opportunity presented itself. Number one, I thought, again, with the clock, the delay or whatever they called on Clavon. I mean, I can understand Johnson's point because there was no clock to really tell. So, but I think he saw that as an opportunity to fire his team up, and he kind of jumped on that and kind of ran with it. And that ultimately wound up being a smart thing.
Anthony, we finally got a good look at Ryan Black in that game, and he had a pretty phenomenal game. What were your thoughts on him? And I guess if Coach Johnson was asked about him, what was his thoughts on Ryan Black?
Yeah, no doubt. Well, Ryan had missed the first 4 games, had a hand injury, had an injection, I guess about 3 weeks ago, and he's just now getting back. But he just provides Georgia another really good left-handed bat. I remember his freshman year at Texas Arlington, he hit over 300, drove in. I think he might have led the team in RBIs, or what didn't lead was like number 2. So he's just a tremendous player, great line drive hitter, which is what they need. And again, it's just a very deep team, and he's somebody who's going to play a lot, even though they've got a lot of good players on it right now. As my phone rings. That's my boss, but I'll call him back later.
Hey, tell him you got more important business.
Yeah, I'll tell Roddy later. I can call him back.
Hey, Roddy will understand. You're talking.
He
baseball.
will.
Anybody knows you understands that's a big deal. That's why we have you on, because not a lot of guys can talk it like you can. But look, Brian Curley got attention for a lot of reasons yesterday. The reasons he should be getting attention is when I watch him pitch, it reminds me of something between Spencer Strider and a right-handed Billy Wagner. I mean, he's 5'10", 210, 215. He's coming at you with the 100. He drops the off-speed stuff in the game yesterday. Pitched well at VCU last year. Looks like he fits right in the SEC. Your thoughts on him and how important he is to Georgia?
Yeah, he's going to be very important for Georgia. We saw him. I saw him for the first time this past weekend at Wilmington, and we knew he threw hard, but wasn't sure I was expecting a consistent 98. And then when he dropped 100 on one of the batters, I'm like, okay, well, this is a little different. We haven't seen this from Georgia in a long time. Last guy to,
Fields.
I guess, kind of compare maybe Fields they had back in 2008 was a hard thrower, could do some really damage at the back end of the bullpen. But he's somebody they've needed. They've lacked this kind of guy for a few seasons now. And I'm not sure if he's going to be quite as animated as maybe we saw, during the game yesterday. I think that game itself had a lot to do with kind of how he was acting there at the very end. But he's good to have.
I've got a follow-up here. He got picked 16th round by the Pirates.
Yep.
How did Georgia get him through the draft? I mean, he transferred from VCU. I'm sure had his choice of options. How did Georgia make that happen?
Well, I asked him about it. We got to talk to him last week, as a matter of fact, and he just laid it all on the line and said that Wes Johnson was the reason. He wanted to learn under the coach that mentored Paul Skeens. I mean, that was what his deal was. I mean, he said the Pirates offered him a good package, but he felt a year into Wes Johnson, he could become an even higher draft pick, next year. So that's what he's banking. He's kind of banking on himself a little bit, and he's certainly off to a good start.
Anthony, I'm curious, what's the latest with the renovations to the stadium?
Well, they're complete. Georgia was supposed to have an open season to home season tomorrow, but they might push that back with some of the cold weather coming. They're going to play a doubleheader now on Friday, but it really looks good. I mean, the synthetic turf field, I've been on it a few times. It looks fantastic. The players will tell you it's a great field to play on. The pitchers like the mound, and it's ironically it's the same kind of turf and field that Duke put in this year. That UNC Wilmington, did the same thing. And I know last week in the one at Wilmington, was played really good. Georgia actually only had one error that whole weekend, playing on that stuff. So that's something I think is going to help them as well, because defensively it's been a little issue for Georgia. It was last year and in previous seasons.
Anthony, we talked about Brian Curley, but I think last night's game, we mentioned it actually yesterday on our show about how deep this Georgia bullpen can get. And I think last night's game is a really good kind of just example of that. You didn't get what you wanted out of Colton Smith necessarily. I mean, he gave up 4 earned runs, but from all the pitchers from there on out were pretty fabulous. Justin Bird struck out 5 in 2 innings. You got good work out of Radke. Just top to bottom, the bullpen was fabulous. Talk about that Georgia bullpen and what you think about it.
And I don't know if funny is the right word, but the guys we saw yesterday are probably considered the secondary guys out of the bullpen. Justin Bird's a guy, I had no idea what he was going to do. He came in and had just a great changeup, struck out 5 of the 6 batters he faced. But then you've got guys like Tyler McLaughlin throwing low 90s. I mean, all these guys have great velo. In the off season, in fall practice, Wes said they had like 17, 18 guys, top out at 95 or higher, which is, that's unheard of at UGA. I've not seen that in a long time, if ever. But they've got guys. You mentioned Curley, Alton Davis, who came over from Alabama. Another guy, left-hander, got that quirky, funky delivery from the left-hand side. Stands on the very end of the rubber, comes in at 97 miles per hour. They've got JT Quinn, the Ole Miss transfer. I think he's going to probably wind up being in starting rotation at some point. But he's another guy that brings it 95, 96. They just got a ton of arms right now, a bunch of different options. And I think I might have told gave Chris this note in one of our conversations. Last year, going into the season, Georgia had 2 guys on the pitching staff who had gone 5 innings or more in a college game. This year, they've got 7 with again, just so much more velocity, so much more arm talent that, if the hitting can be consistent, I mean, it's going to be a very, very dangerous team.
Yeah, I count 18 guys that threw a pitch in college on this roster. a year ago. That doesn't include some freshmen, I think, that were highly regarded. But I want to ask you about the rotation, and it may not matter as much. It's a different era of baseball. You get through games with 5, 6, 7 guys, sometimes more throwing innings. But the rotation, Leighton Finley, Colton Smith, Charlie Goldstein, if that goes well, that's a really good bunch. Question is it going to go well? Goldstein never can stay healthy. Colton Smith's had some issues. How do you size up what they open the games with at the moment?
I don't know if it's we can look at what happened this first weekend and just really gauge it from that. I mean, the conditions at Wilmington were not conducive to a lot of stuff. And of course, Colton pitched yesterday. The only reason he pitched yesterday because he had back spasms. Was supposed to pitch the opener last Friday. They held him back. They just want to get him some work. Charlie Goldstein went one inning, looked very sharp. I mean, but that's all he was going to throw. They're going to continually, slowly build him up. To eventually, I think maybe so once SEC play begins, he's somebody can maybe go 5 or 6 innings. That's kind of what they're shooting for. But Leighton and Colton have pitched big games. They looked very well last year. I mean, Colton's a preseason All-American, according to some people. Right now struck out 116 in like 70 innings. Last year, and again the depth they've got. I mean, Quinn is somebody who they can use. They could even let Alton Davis start some game. Brian Zeldin is starting. Zach Brown, who did not pitch well against Wilmington the other day, they converted him into a starter. So again, they've just got a ton of options, a ton of arms, and even if they have to, it has to be a deal where they can pitch one guy 3, one guy 4, and then bring in another guy. They've seemed to have enough arms and talent to do that.
Yeah, Chris and I have talked. It does seem like one of the strengths for this Georgia team this season just is the amount of depth that they have, rotation-wise, bullpen arms. I mean, is that fair? I know it's a small sample size, 5 games in.
No question about it. I mean, at the end of the last season, there were probably, I want to say maybe 4 or 5 pitchers they felt comfortable in. This year, they've got 15, 16 guys who we've already seen this year and have come in and looked excellent. Now, of course, that as good as these teams are now, it's not going to be what they see once conference play, begins or anything like that. But these guys are getting some valuable experience. They're gaining confidence. And Coach, I know, is very, very excited about what he's got on his hands with his pitching staff.
Anthony, the one guy who I think even last night or the games before that, who hasn't quite showed up yet is Trey Phelps. Obviously once his bat starts getting hot, that's going to help this Georgia team a lot more. But I saw he's batting currently 143. I think he has like 3 hits and 20-ish at bats, something like that from what I saw. What have you seen from him that's causing him to be a little sluggish out of the gate? And once he gets going, how much is he going to help this team?
Well, that was a concern coming in. There's a lot of expectations on Trey. People call him a first-round draft pick. Have to follow in the footsteps of Charlie Condon, which is not easy to do. And that was the question. How is he going to respond to this added pressure? People now know who he is. And that's kind of what we're kind of waiting to see. Now, this past weekend, again, he hit a couple of balls at Wilmington that would have, any other day, would have been gone. So he could be easily sitting there with 2 or 3 home runs right now. But that wind at Wilmington was coming off the beach there, and it's like 20, 25 miles per hour blowing in for left field. And there were several balls in that game that were hit. I've got a hill with little seats up in the top of it, which I would have sworn would have been, way out of the park. It wound up being caught on the track. And Trey had a couple of those, during that game. But I think he's pressing a little bit. I mean, he's still hitting, third in the lineup, second, third in the lineup. Coaches keeping him there to keep that confidence going. But yeah, I know it's something. I know he wants to kind of get back on track. Now, maybe now once they're back at Foley Field, start feeling a little more comfortable. And kind of get back in the thing. But if healthy and, if he's swinging like he's capable of, he's one of the best hitters in the SEC.
Yeah, Dash, we were chatting privately this week, and you said you thought there was 7 or 8 balls that could have left the yard
easily.
The Georgia hit that didn't.
Easily.
I mean, that's a part that I think the press is run scoring by about 15%. So if anybody watched Georgia's offense and kind of freaked out over opening weekend, those are definite points. But speaking of the lineup, Dash, Dylan Goldstein, the guy that was a key bat for them a year ago, lefty. Now, I don't know where he fits in a crowded outfield. I'll let you sort that out. But,
yeah,
hey, look, they have a chance to get him healthy? I think you said his hearing is not healthy. Get him eligible under the
Yes.
Diego Pavia ruling. Where does that stand, and what's the timeline?
Yeah, he's the hearing is actually today in Macon at 3:00. So we may hear this afternoon whether Georgia Dylan has Dylan Goldstein available to their for them for the rest of the year. Now, he's been practicing with the team. He's been enrolled. So it's in fact, you look at his situation; it's almost identical to what Diego's was at Vanderbilt. It's in JUCO the same exact time. He's already enrolled in school. And his attorneys, I know, expect him to get the approval. And if that's the case, that's just going to give Georgia another veteran left-handed bat. Now, I don't know if you're going to see him inject into a starting lineup, because they've got some, in my opinion, some very good players they brought in, this year. But if you're Georgia and say you're bringing a guy who's 23, 24 years old off the bench who had done it all, seen it all in the SEC for a big opportunity in the game to win it for you, that's pretty significant in my opinion, especially at Georgia. The short right field fence. He's going to be somebody that teams will be very, very concerned about. And if there's one lineup weakness maybe for Georgia is that they don't have a ton of really strong left-handed batters. He would certainly help in that regard.
Yeah, left-handed power is the one thing on that offense that is lacking. I think their normal lineup. Ryan Black, good hitter, but hit 5 bombs last year at UTA. Mm-hmm. Burnett hit 18, and boy, what a weekend that kid had on the base pass too.
Yeah.
Other than that, unless they're catching Henry Hunter, it is a right-handed dominated lineup. Mm-hmm. I know they got Nolan McCarthy in center. You probably don't want to take him out for defense. They got Devin Obie in left, one of the best transfers in the country. Burnett's torn it up. I mean, if you plug him in at DH, you're kicking Slade Alford out unless you throw him somewhere else in the infield. It'll be a very interesting lineup shuffle if they get here.
And they've got Charlie Jones from Air Force. Now, Charlie struck out last night, but he's a guy who 16 home runs for the academy.
Yeah.
Christian Adams hit 340 for FAU last year. That's what I'm saying. This is a team that's got 13 to 14 guys in it who in a normal year I think would be starting for this team, but they have gone so overboard with bringing in guys who are buying into they don't need to necessarily play every day. They've got them all kind of fighting for the cause, so to speak. And they got a talented group of freshmen as well. Kay Brown is somebody to kind of keep in the back of your pocket a little bit. He has some of the highest exit velo on the team this fall, and there's another one of those guys who hit a blast at UNC Wilmington. Would have been a home run at Foley, but was knocked back down. Just a lot of talent on this ball team. It's just a matter of them coming together. Although I will admit, now there's some of these new guys, you always kind of wonder how they're going to hit once they see some of this SEC pitching, because it's a different animal, as you guys know, than what they've used to seeing, especially a guy like Rylan Zabrowski from Miami of Ohio, who's got he's a big guy, but a little bit of a hole in his swing. I mean, that's something that's going to be exploited, by any number of SEC pitchers. So you're going to have to shorten some things up there. But, that's probably the only real question I've got right now about this squad, how some of those hitters adjust.
Yeah, this just in, there's some really elite arms in this league this year, and a lot of them. Dash, anything we missed on Georgia that's a talking point before we let you go here?
Yeah, I don't think so. Like I said, I mean, the pitching, I think, is a story right now. They've had 2 games, the game at Wilmington where they fell behind, big. They had like eight innings of, shutout ball, and the same thing, last night, 7 1/3, shutout ball against Kennesaw State. Just a lot of arms on this team, a lot of velo. And even though the offense is still kind of finding itself with so many new faces, I think the talent is there for this to be a team that, we're still talking about a good little bit once the SEC season is complete.
Yeah. Dash, tell folks where they can find your coverage. You are the longest tenured beat writer on Georgia baseball by a factor of probably a dozen. I don't know.
Yeah, it's more than that probably now, but since Chip retired, but
Right. You've done it a while.
You can find me at ujsports.com and on Twitter at Anthony-1.
Hey, Dash, I promise we'll have you on again. Always fun talking baseball with you. You and I are good friends away from this, too.
Go back.
Dude. We hey, next time you come to Nashville, Polar Donuts on me, okay?
Sounds good, man.
All right. Take it easy, Dash.
See you guys.
That's Anthony Dash of UGAsports.com. our go-to guy for Georgia baseball. That was great context on Georgia's weekend. So if you're tuning in late and you're a Georgia fan or just want to know more about the Bulldogs, we covered a lot of ground there with Anthony Dasher. So check that out. Next up, Alfred. Our resident Brody Donay hype man. I'm going to give you the floor just to celebrate Brody Donay's week, for which he got named SEC Player of the Week, and then just kept on going yesterday against Jacksonville.
I don't know if y'all talked about the awards while I was on the plane or anything like that for players, but he did win Player of the Week, and that continued in the game against Jacksonville yesterday for them. He homered again. I think the big thing I harped on with him last year was you could see power there. I mean, he's huge. He's the Hulk when you look at him. It's just about the plate discipline and stuff. And he struck out only once in the handful of at-bats he's had. So it's a very small sample size. And obviously that's not maintainable. But it's a sign, I think, of kind of the discipline he has and everything. And you got to give credit to this Florida team. I mean, that game was close for a lot of it. And guys like him, Bobby Boser, kind of had some big hits to get them back in the lead and really kind of cruise from there. It's also a good sign if you're a Florida fan watching that you did good in a midweek. I mean, at least to start the year, because that was just a topic of discussion with that team. Yeah, a season ago. So that's the big thing. And again, going back to Donay, Florida just needs some sort of. They don't obviously no one can be Jack Caglione, but they need ways to plug the hole that was Jack Caglione. Yeah. And to me, Donay's doing that power-wise. Obviously, like I said, a .634 batting average is not maintainable for an entire season. But the home run hitting he's doing is very much maintainable. I mean, this is a guy who could touch 25, get close to 30 if he wanted to. At this rate, he's had one every game. So we'll see what he does tonight. I mean, they play again tonight against Florida A&M. They're back in Concord Ballpark. And I was pretty happy. Again, if you're a Florida fan, the big takeaway for me though is just we got it done. We got it done in a midweek game. Maybe get it done tonight too, and just keep cruising from there.
Did y'all see his swing of the home run, or he barely moved and just launched it? It just kind of gives you an idea of his raw power and his ability.
He's Hercules.
I'm
telling you.
Yeah, he did not step at all into that pitch. By the way, you address a couple comments. LSU pitching, we've talked about that a little bit. Goodness gracious, that staff is loaded, which brings me into a talking point with Florida. I had some questions about them coming in. You heard Kevin O'Sullivan talking about we need to figure out more ways to score runs other than just hitting bombs, which they have gone and gotten speed. They've now stolen. Let me look this up. Florida's now got.
Should be over 15.
I cannot find their stolen base total on their stat sheet. Here we go. 16 of 18. I think Florida stole either 16 or 18 bases all last season.
Yeah.
Let's see who's doing. I mean, they talked about Kyle Jones doing the running for them, and Hayden Yost is their leader in stolen bases at this point of the season. So you check that box. The other thing I was looking at was is their starting pitching elite? I mean, we know the names. We know Liam Peterson is a potential top 5 overall guy for 2026. We know Jake Clemente, how talented he is. He's going to get drafted. Had a really good summer in the Cape this last year. And Pierce Coppola, who, for 4 years has not been healthy. When he gets in there, he looks unhittable for short spurts, but short spurts are all he can get. Well, he threw well this weekend. And so that's the good. My question for them, and you can check the stats on other stat sheets, and this is where we are in the SEC. When we are comparing you against the top teams, we're going to pick you apart because everybody's got everything. But I look at them right now. You're seeing a lot of teams that have thrown 15, 16, 17 guys 4 or 5 games in. Florida's thrown 10?
Yeah,
last night.
Yeah, and 3 of those guys have all thrown an inning. That's kind of my question about them now. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not saying they don't have pitching depth. I don't know. You got some guys out there. Frank Menendez hasn't thrown yet. Christian Rodriguez hasn't thrown yet. Some other guys like that. and I feel like they've got a couple other studs, freshman recruits that hadn't thrown yet. Barbieri has thrown yet. Skylar Sanford hasn't thrown yet. So they've got some guys. And look, maybe in this 5-game start to the season, where they got back-to-backs, maybe they're just holding some back for other games. But that's kind of my next question with them, because it feels to me like, okay, can we score in other ways? Check that box. How's the top-end rotation look? So far, so good. That's the thing I'm looking for next, guys.
I do think it is one of those things, just because they had so many games right out of the gates to begin the season. They were one of the few teams in the SEC to have to play 5 games over the course of a week. So that could potentially be a part of it. As Alfred said, they play Florida A&M tonight, and then this coming week they got 5 more games in the week as well. So I think the next few days we'll kind of have more of our questions answered with them, just of like not only how many arms they got, but I guess potentially who they trust, kind of who they don't trust, that kind of a thing.
I think we're getting a little bit of an idea of it now. I mean, I think O'Sullivan loves Aiden King, like loves using him. He used him he was like the starter against Jacksonville back in the fall. He went back to him tonight again. Or not tonight, last night again. He did okay. Luke McNeely stood out to me. He was pretty good, coming in and trying to put out the fire that Billy Barlow started. So that was something that stood out to me. But yeah, as time goes on, we'll get a better idea of it too, for sure.
Yeah, well, next week will be a little bit of a moment of truth for them. We've talked about how much they've struggled in midweeks. And let's be fair, too, to Florida. I don't think year in and year out anybody plays a midweek schedule like Florida does. You get a lot of teams in the SEC are just beating up on teams. They just show up and win. By virtue of being in Florida, unless you don't have any idea what you're doing, you're probably respectable in baseball. So they got to, it's not just playing Florida State or maybe UCF, Stetson, Jacksonville. A lot of teams have been tricky for them. I almost kept them out of the postseason last year. We're just losing some of those midweek games. So I think that's the thing with the Gators. They get tested week in and week out a lot of times where other teams aren't. And you look at next week. They've got a 5-game schedule, Stetson on a Tuesday, North Florida on a Wednesday, and then you get a day off before you go into a series with Miami, which is always interesting. So next up, gentlemen, let's see. Let me check the list of topics to talk about. I think let's just go here. The offensive outburst in Knoxville yesterday was something. Maybe not the best baseball to watch when you're seeing 22 guys take walks, but 5 home runs. You had 2 of them. What did we get 2 in the same inning?
Yeah, Dalton Barker hit 2 in the same inning.
I thought I was dreaming that maybe, but glad you cleared that up. And I don't know what else to say about Tennessee's offense. It's different guys, same results. That was, if you didn't catch it, Tennessee won 29-4 yesterday and won it in 7 innings. I guess really 6 hitting innings. So there's that. I mean, what more do you say about these guys? It doesn't matter if Fisher's out, they just plug in a Levi Clark. Somewhere they plug in a Borgo while they're waiting on Ozuna. It just feels like they got power coming off the bench, and goodness gracious, I think poor UNC Asheville was afraid to throw it anywhere near the plate yesterday. Can't really blame them.
No, and they've played. The one thing I'll say too is they've played a ton of freshmen this past weekend, a little bit yesterday too. I know Abernathy got some time in and playing, but they just keep on raking. I mean, Dean Curley had 2 yesterday. He continues to be kind of their primary power bat, I think, for at least for now. Gavin Kylan had 1. It's been all over the place, and it's incredible that it keeps happening because you look in 2 innings. I think that the big stretch came in the 2 innings where they had 17 home runs, or not 17 runs, excuse me. So after that, it was just kind of like, what are you going to do if you're UNC Asheville? But yeah, this team just continues to work. It wasn't a great start they went with Arvidsson to start, and it wasn't great for him, and it didn't really matter. I mean, they just continued to rake on that team, and I think pitching wise, looking at other guys who did good, Nick Abraham was pretty good for them. I know that he was someone a lot of people have talked about. You got 2 strikeouts from Tanner Wiggins and Braden Sharp. I mean, they went deep into their depth, pitching wise yesterday, just to get some experience in, because that's what you do when you're winning 100 million to 0. So, yeah, that's how that worked out for them. And then I also saw yesterday too, that is the most runs they've scored in the Tony Vitello era. It tied it in one game. So,
man,
great afternoon for the Tennessee Volunteers.
Yeah, to me, they just continue to pass the eye test with flying colors. And then the other thing I thought of, whoever finally made it an SEC rule, the run rule, kind of like what we have for softball, that's a smart human being right there. So congrats just for everybody at that ballpark. When Tennessee puts up 20 runs, it's just like, okay, we don't have to go the full 9. We're just going to go the 7 tonight. So Tennessee just continues to roll. They just look very impressive in all aspects.
Let's move on to what I think was one of the 2 most interesting games of the day. That's Ole Miss knocking off Arkansas State. Ole Miss had a 2-0 lead going into the 9th, and then they turned it over to the bullpen, which made it interesting. But Judd Unimark, what a day for that kid yesterday. Steals home early in the game, then hits a walk-off home run. Ole Miss kind of escaped yesterday, Graham. But at this point, early in the season where your pitching's getting taxed, you don't know what you have, you're just happy to get a win. And Judd Unimark just kind of took that one and won it on his own yesterday.
Yeah, he really did. And weather not great, so they moved this game up, a few hours just to kind of make it easier for everybody to get back home, because it did snow. I mean, there's 4 to 6 inches of snow in the area after last night. So yeah, Unimark, I was trying to think, can't remember the last time I saw somebody with his size still home plate. And then, he wraps it up with the walk-off shot. So Ole Miss and Arkansas State, they play each other all the time, good little friendly rivalry. And a key for Ole Miss this season to try to punch their ticket back in the NCAA tournament, they got to take care of business in these midweeks. You just got to score one more run than the other team, and that'll just kind of add up over time in the win column. So good start for Ole Miss, just finding a way to win this one. One thing I will say, you got to clean up just the bullpen situation. Spencer, this is like 2 outings in a row now where it's just kind of been an adventure. He walked 3 in Arlington. I'm sure, Alfred, you got to see that in person. And then, yesterday was kind of rocky as well. So they just kind of they got to get him going on track and just kind of find, some sort of an answer on the back portion of their bullpen, like how they want to handle 7, 8, 9th inning.
Yeah, I'd say so too. Otherwise, I think besides him, the pitching was a little fine. I mean, no one really, gave up a whole ton. I thought Alex Canny looked pretty okay. I saw like the beginning of this game. Alex Canny looked okay. You had Walter Hooks come in, Braden Jones come in relief as well, among some other guys. Spencer, it's really come down to Spencer's just kind of, sort of pitching that's made these games either losses or close. But yeah, if you're Ole Miss, just based off last year, I know this game maybe wasn't supposed to be as close as it was. You're just going to take a win. And I mean, I'm sure in almost snowy weather, you're going to take a win, however you can get it. Cold winds should count double, in my opinion. I saw that on Twitter today, and I think there's some validity to that. So yeah, I mean, if you're Ole Miss, you're going to take it, move on, and knock out the next one.
God bless the fans that sit through those. When I'm at one of those, I'm in a press box, so I'm not having to deal with it for the most part. Yeah. So
that was the home opener too. So like you got your diehards, since it's the home opener, they're there. But again, I'm with you. Like, that's the coldest place in Oxford, and I'm not lying. Swayze Field. It's in a hole, and the sun doesn't hit it. That is ice cold.
Yeah, can't wait to get out and see that. All kidding aside, hey, probably the biggest win that caught my eye yesterday, and I didn't get to watch any of it, was Auburn beating Troy, which was ranked 24th, I guess, by D1. Troy, a program that if you follow college baseball, feels like that team's in a regional every second or third year, is at 3, sometimes at 2. a lot of history and tradition that goes back away. And I feel like this is a game these two teams play every year once or twice. Guess what stood out to me? Auburn comes from behind to walk this one off. The bullpen, Carson Myers started and struggled an inning and 2/3, 5 runs. But the bullpen, Jackson Sanders, one of their 2 prized freshman recruits on that pitching staff, comes in, goes at 2 1/3, gives up 1 run, strikes out 2. But I think the big thing to note, Cam Tilley comes in, a lefty who's been on that staff for a few years now, strikes out 7 in 3 innings, allows just 2 walks, no runs. And then Jet Johnson, a two-way player who transferred from Texas A&M after not playing much a year ago. Didn't know how much like he'd really pitched for them. I just thought in my mind he was more of a hitter. He gets the win. He goes 2 scoreless, no base runners allowed, 4 strikeouts. Grand big win for Butch Thompson and his club yesterday.
It really was. Those are all good points that you made, but I'll tell you what stood out to me. I mean, we talked about Ike Irish a lot and just first team SEC preseason pick for us. He only had 1 hit opening weekend. And then yesterday was kind of like his breakout party to begin the season. He went 2 for 4 yesterday, had the walk-off hit. So, you know, you can never take anything for granted in baseball. So we all kind of think that Ike Irish is going to be awesome. You know, Butch Thompson said he can be a potential top 10 pick. So if you're an Auburn fan, that's really good news to see, you know, Ike Irish finally start to come alive. But again, this is one of those games, kind of like the Kennesaw State Georgia game, in-state showdown. It was chippy. Yesterday, by the way, college baseball social media was like, it was electric. That's what college baseball Twitter was meant for. It was just like firework after firework. It was an awesome night college baseball wise. But for me, Ike Irish was kind of the story, getting back on track and getting the walk-off hit.
That's a good point, Graham. It was like so much stuff happening, and it was probably the most exciting midweek day online in quite some time. My thing is Sunbelt teams are tough, guys. They're tough at baseball. I wish Sven was here. He found out how tough they were yesterday. We'll probably get into that game eventually, but I'm
Shot
sorry,
the haymaker.
I'm sorry, Sven. I'm sorry, Sven. We have fun here, as Chris says. But all kidding aside, another guy who stood out, I don't think we mentioned yet, Derek Fabian, homered. He was 3 for 3, pretty timely yesterday. Obviously, the game got closer, though, and it is a tough Troy team. I mean, D1 Baseball thinks highly of them. I'm not sure there's another Sunbelt team ranked. I think they're the only one, so they're at the top of that league in their minds. So, yeah, this is a big win, an upset in kind of all respects, you know, as weird as it sounds maybe to some people, but a big win for Butch Thompson and company. And again, kind of like Ole Miss, this is a team that's looking to, you know, sort of have a better year this year and get back to Omaha where they were, you know, not too long ago. This is the start. These little wins do add up that you have in the midweek. And this wasn't a little win. I mean, you beat a ranked team that's in your state, that's going to probably be trying to compete for an NCAA tournament spot along with you. So yeah, big time stuff from players like Tilley, Fabian, obviously Ike Irish. I mean, you want Ike Irish to do Ike Irish things. That was a pretty Ike Irish thing, walking the game off like he did. So pretty good win for Auburn. I would go ahead and say, along with you guys, best win of the night by far out of any of these teams.
Yeah, keep an eye on that pitching staff. It is deep with guys who are returning. They added some key pieces in the bullpen. Want to see Hayden Murphy against Dudes because he had a tremendous summer. So don't sleep on Auburn. We had Auburn, I think, 9th in our preseason poll, and people had some fun with that a little bit. But you look at Butch Thompson and his record of coming off years and all these arms he's got back. They've had a good history of developing. I know the season didn't start the way they wanted to, but again, Cade Ballou with his mom's death and all that was just a tough spot to be in. So I sort of, you know, give them a little bit of a mulligan on the weekend. Okay, told LSU people we talk about their team. LSU beat Southern 13-1. Southern, a team, I feel like the auto bid out of the SWAC every year in the NCAA tournament is either Southern or Grambling. I'm sure I missed somebody there, but you know, for one of the probably better teams in SWAC, that's an in-state game. We have talked about LSU's pitching ad nauseum, and boy, we saw more of it yesterday. Connor Ware, the JUCO kid who we wanted to see pitch, was great out of the gate. 3 scoreless, 2 strikeouts, 1 walk, no runners. Zach Cowan, we said, hey, when are we going to see Zach Cowan? He threw about as many innings as anybody in the country threw at Wofford last year. Hadn't seen him. Looks like the spot for him right now is long relief. That's what he did yesterday. 3 innings, 3 strikeouts. Gives up 1 run that was unearned. And then Cade Woods coming in at the end. Another one of umpteen talented arms. Offensively, Derek Curiel goes 3 for 3. Ethan Fry hit the only home run. I just took a lot of topics off the board there for you guys, but anything stand out with LSU?
The other guy, too, that did pretty good, Stephen Milam, had a big triple that scored some runs. I mean, that's a guy who I think when we talked to Jay Johnson, or when I talked to him, I kind of harped on, the whole thing with him and Jared Jones being the 2 big returners coming back. That'll make a difference. And then Stephen Milam, obviously having that big hit helps you. I think anytime he plays well, LSU plays really well. You saw that, in the postseason last year, that was often the case with him. So that was good to see. And yeah, I mean, this LSU team kind of just slowly taking care of business. We have them right up there with Texas A&M and Tennessee. Those 2 teams kind of just taking care of business. Tennessee really kind of kicking tail, but LSU, kind of dominating their way so far, doing what they need to do against these teams. And yeah, it's been pretty good for them. I'm excited to see Cowan out there. He was a transfer I was really excited about, and I'm sure they caught on to him when he was in their regional with them in Chapel Hill, playing for Wofford. I mean, they literally just scooped him up from there because they liked what they saw, and good to see him out there. It's just another pitcher to add to the staff that's already deep and has a fair case to be one of the best, if not the best, in the SEC.
Yeah, my big takeaway, Go Mahal 23 said it in the chat, and I mean, he's right. And when you look at the numbers, the eye-popping numbers, LSU pitching 52 strikeouts, they've only walked 3 so far to start the season. Just unbelievable. So that's through the first 4 games. So to me, LSU, it's just, I don't know, to me, it's just a really good mix of like key returners, Bear Jones, like that, versus their new additions, whether it be transfer portal guys, true freshmen like William Smith. They just seem like to be a combination of all 3, and this is shaping up to be like a super talented LSU team.
Yeah, depth everywhere. Offense, defense. I mean, catcher. It's crazy what Jay Johnson has done. All right, guys. Couple more games here. Let's see what's left on the board. Vanderbilt beats Air Force 5-2. South Carolina knocks off Winthrop 5-3. Alabama hammers MTSU 12-2, and then we'll get to Mississippi State. Also, that was the only loss the league took yesterday. Alfred, I'll start it off. I'll just give you the floor to take whatever game you want to take here.
Yeah, I'll do. I caught a good bit actually of South Carolina Winthrop because I didn't catch them at all this past weekend against Sacred Heart. So I got my fill in with there. Or I got my fill in with them. Kennedy Jones started the game off with a home run. Good to see him hit the long ball. Obviously, you're going to have Ethan Petrie doing that for them a ton, but you can't do it by himself. Kennedy Jones is probably one of the next suspects to hit home runs along with him. Then Winthrop sort of cracked their way back into the game. They took a 3-2 lead. It wasn't a incredible start for Jarvis Evans, but he did strike out 5 and 3 and a third. Some good stuff there. Brandon Stone came in and really did a good job kind of quelching the fire a little bit. 3 strikeouts and 3 2/3 and gave up just 1 hit. Parker Marlick got some swings in or got some pitches in. Brendan Sweeney came in and got his second save of the year. And then Talmadge LaCroix with a really big knock to sort of give South Carolina the lead back. And they go on to win this one 5-3. So, kind of this low key game. It was a cold day up in good old Rock Hill, South Carolina, where they played Winthrop. So, kind of weird, going on the road for these midweeks. I mean, Florida did it last night, and they kind of had some issues early on with Jacksonville. That'll tend to happen maybe a little bit in these road games, but South Carolina didn't panic. And like we've been saying about these in-state ones, it tends to get a little chippy because I'm sure Winthrop wants to knock off the South Carolina Gamecocks in baseball. That's like a Super Bowl, to that school a lot of the time. So But nonetheless, South Carolina didn't panic. You got to give credit to Paul Maneri. I mean, they're sitting pretty right now, 4-0 on the season, and they're just going to continue to look to roll.
Yeah, to me last night, living in the state of Mississippi, just the Mississippi State Southern Miss game, kind of a roller coaster of a night for Mississippi State. They get the big win basketball wise, storm the court against A&M, and then you look up and you see, oh, we lose to Southern Miss and Hattiesburg. So kind of a new wrinkle this year. Ole Miss and State normally play Southern Miss in Jackson. That's not really happening anymore. So they'll either play in Hattiesburg or Starkville or Oxford. So first road game of the year for Mississippi State, just really didn't get off to a good start. Southern Miss scored all three of their runs in the first two innings, and then just State really couldn't get much of anything going. They only had 4 hits all night. State dominated opening weekend against Manhattan. So they'll be fine. It's no shame at all losing to Southern Miss. I saw they had almost 6,000 people at that game last night. So it's a big deal in the state of Mississippi. So Southern Miss, a perennial NCAA tournament team. So Mississippi State will be fine. It's just that's a tough place to go play in Hattiesburg. It's a huge game for Southern Miss playing one of those teams in Hattiesburg. Ole Miss and State don't really play Southern in Hattiesburg very much. And anything. For some reason, State is playing Southern Miss in football in Hattiesburg next season. Don't ask me why. So, I mean, other than that, that's just a big deal for Ole Miss or State to make the trip to Hattiesburg.
Yeah, that takes some guts. Might also be money. Who knows? Couple things that stood out. Jarvis Evans is a guy that I've really liked for a couple years. Was it Georgia, now transferred to South Carolina, made the start. Wasn't super effective yesterday. Gave up 3 in 3 runs. Look, it's early. It's cold. We'll see how that goes. But wanted to see a little bit more out of him. One of my few disappointments of the day. Alabama game kind of interesting. Tyler Fay, when we talked to Rob Vaughn, I was under the impression he was going to be in their rotation. He came out of the bullpen, and that one gave them 2 innings. Not quite perfect. Gave up 1 runner. J.T. Blackwood, the JUCO kid out of Wallace State in Tennessee, who they liked, was pretty overpowering in his time on the mound there last year. He got the start and gave them 4 scoreless. Will Hodo had a big game for them offensively. They started Torres at third yesterday. I think he DH'd all weekend. And Brady Neal having a nice start for them. That's a team that scored a lot of runs this weekend. Alabama kind of, once you get to the top of the league is loaded. This league might have 5 of the top 6 teams in the country. Maybe Virginia's that other team outside the league. Then you get in the middle tier with Vanderbilt, maybe Mississippi State, Texas, some really good teams too. And then we kind of forget about Alabama. But they scored a lot of runs this weekend, guys. And that's another staff that's got a lot of arms. They're really difficult for me to rank right now. But Rob Vaughn's teams it's a blue-collar mentality. They just come at you every day. He recruits guys that are underappreciated. And so I think we put Alabama, 14th or 15th in our power rankings this week just because all these teams are good and they got to go somewhere. That's probably music to their ears. So anyway, MTSU, not one of your easier midweek teams to play. They're from the Sun Belt, which is a pretty good baseball league. What's Sun Belt or Conference USA? I always forget. It gets those mixed up.
USA. It's hard.
Conference USA. Yeah, Sun Belt's better, but CSUA is not awful. Anyway. Yeah, guys. What's that?
Dallas Baptist Conference.
Oh, yeah.
USA. They moved up into there.
Of that league.
Yeah.
Party thoughts? Anything we missed
here? How Dallas Baptist lost last night?
Yeah, I say that, and that happened. So
they gave up 11 runs in the 9th inning to lose.
Mm-hmm.
To who?
Rio Grande Valley.
Yeah, Texas Grande Valley.
Yeah.
UTRGV.
Yes, that's exactly who it is.
Rolls off the tongue.
That sounds like one of those cable channels where they host design shows.
It really does. Yep.
Anyway, I think we hit everybody. McNeese and A&M got, I think, canceled. Okay. One of these was listed as postponed yesterday, and the other is canceled. But it says here on the SEC scoreboard, McNeese A&M canceled, Houston, Texas canceled, and Kentucky get postponed.
Yeah,
canceled?
So Kentucky, they've still have only played 2 games so far this season.
Yeah, both Friday. Like we haven't talked about Kentucky. It's not been intentional. They just haven't been out there playing ball. Let's see what they've got coming up.
They got Belmont this weekend.
Yeah, in my backyard. So Morehead State was supposed to be the game yesterday. Then they got Belmont for 3 in Nashville. And then they got interesting midweek next week, Tuesday with Belmont. Then they get Hofstra, which we saw that ended against Tennessee. So, yeah, let's get Kentucky back out of the diamond, guys. Interested to talk about those dudes. Let's see, today. And by the way, tomorrow we'll be back again live, probably at 10 Central. We're going to spend our time. Let's see, we'll recap probably games today. Queens at South Carolina, 3 Central, Alabama State at Alabama, 4 Central, North Alabama at Auburn, also 4 Central, LSU facing Nicholls, 6:30 Central. Oklahoma UTA has been postponed. That's 5 games on a Wednesday. That's a lot. We'll hit those, and then we'll preview the weekend. Probably not every team, every series, but the most interesting ones, which we'll hit those tomorrow. Guys, any parting thoughts here?
Exciting midweek day yesterday, actually. It was very entertaining. Like Graham said, everyone online was loving it, and it did not stop. And when I thought it stopped, Curley gave me a fun little video to watch over and over again. So pretty awesome. Let's get more of that. Let's get more of that in February to make it exciting.
Yeah, Curley, by the way, he got on my radar last weekend. So he obviously has more eyeballs on him this year, pitching in the SEC than VCU. So he does like the Nestor
the leg thing. Yeah.
And he'll stop, like totally stop, and then still deliver 100 like it's nothing. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, that feels like an arm injury waiting to happen.
Yes. I hope it doesn't happen for his sake, but
yeah.
He did it a decent amount a week ago, and then obviously last night just goes viral.
Yeah. Yeah, it also feels like a pitching motion that's going to get called out and put a stop to by time league play comes around.
Yeah, we'll see.
Am I wrong here, Graham?
I mean, we'll see. I mean, again, our conversations with half the head coaches, before the season started, just everybody's it feels like everybody's in wait and see mode just to see how much is actually enforced.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've seen unusual motions and delays and stuff. We'll get. You've seen those sometimes. The league will issue a clarification and they'll put a stop to it midseason. So I don't know. Once we get to SEC play, maybe we don't see more of that from Curley. But Sam calling me out here, and rightfully so. I went to grad school at MTSU. Got the wrong conference off the jump. That's poor. That's on me.
Hey,
I kind of knew. I said Sun Belt. Like, I don't think that's right.
It's hard. They were in the Sun Belt, and like again, if you can keep track of everything, like props, because it's very hard to keep track. And remember, like a couple of years ago, Middle Tennessee and Western Kentucky, they tried to leave to go to the MAC. That must happen.
Yeah. Well, I feel like MTSU ought to be in the Sun Belt. It's a better baseball league. That's a program that's got some tradition. Used to go to the NCAAs just about every year under Steve Peterson. Been a little rougher for them more recently, but anyway, correction there.
It makes sense country-wise too.
Yeah. All right, we'll be back at it tomorrow, probably around 10 Central. We got basketball coverage coming tonight. Probably we'll do a reaction show. I don't know if we'll do it after Vandy, Kentucky, or we'll wait till the late night games. But either way, we'll have that. We'll have basketball reactions in the morning. Then I'll go straight into this. I'll jump from that one to this one, and then I think I'm doing a live football show tomorrow too. I'll just let Chase tell me what we're doing there. That's the way that one goes. I got enough to keep up with baseball and basketball. I'm like, just tell me the topics and wind me up and throw me on football too. So that's the plan tomorrow. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for the comments. Tell a friend. We're going to be doing SEC baseball content. Oh man, at least 5 days a week, maybe 6. And maybe multiple things at a time. So hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, tell a friend. You can find us on your podcast podcast platforms too. When I can't pronounce words, it's time to go. So we will. For Alfred Ezman, Graham Doty, I'm Chris Lee. You've been watching baseball coverage here at Southeastern 16.